Still waiting for Peter, huh? Power failure. No. Okay, I think, Mr. Griffin, we should start because Mr. Hanley's experiencing a power failure where he is. So that's a challenge for him. So maybe we should, oh, there he is.
There he is.
Are you good, Mr. Hanley? You're on mute.
Muted, Peter.
I had a power failure but it's back up.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Good to have you. Good to see you with the lights.
Okay.
Ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. We have our, let me see. We have our Spanish interpreter for this meeting this evening, Enrique Montaldo. For those of you who would like to attend the meeting in Spanish, that option is available. Mr. Montaldo, would you please communicate that for us this evening?
Tenemos a nuestro intérprete de español para la reunión de esta tarde. Para aquellos que deseen asistir a la reunión en español, esta opción está disponible. Gracias.
If you wish to view closed captions of this meeting, please view the meeting on the SMUHSD board meeting YouTube channel. The link to the YouTube channel can be found on our website. You may view the captions in English as we live stream our meeting tonight, and you may view the captions in a variety of other languages if you choose to watch after this meeting has ended. Viewers may request additional accommodations by calling 650-558-2201. That's 650-558-2201. We will be pulling item H1, organization of the Board of Trustees, as we must schedule the annual organizational meeting to occur within 15 days on or after the second Friday in December. A special meeting will be held for this reorganization on Monday, December 13th at 10 a.m. The report out of closed session, the board voted to approve a settlement agreement with a minor student and the family of a minor student. The district will pay $175,000 through the San Mateo County Schools Insurance Group. The agreement was approved by a vote of 4 ayes, 0 noes, nays, and 1 abstention. In closed session, the board, upon motion of trustees Lees Dwyer and seconded by trustee Andrade Zuniga, moved to approve a special ed settlement with a vote of 5-0. In closed session, the board, upon motion of trustee Land and seconded by trustee Andrade Zuniga, moved to approve a stipulated expulsion with a vote of 5-0. In closed session, the board, upon motion of trustee Land and seconded by trustee Andrade Zuniga, moved to approve to postpone the expulsion hearing of one case with a vote of 5-0. And it looks like that might be here twice. In closed session, the board, upon motion of trustee Land and seconded by trustee Hanley, moved to approve to postpone the expulsion hearing of one case with a vote of 5-0. This is a public meeting of the San Mateo Union High School District Board of Trustees. If you wish to make a comment about an agenda item or during public comment section at the beginning of the agenda, please send an email to comments@smuhsd.org. That's comments@smuhsd.org with your name, email address, and your Zoom name, if different, and the item under which you would like to comment. The board president will call on you. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. Okay. I'm going to ask the superintendent, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm actually going to do a roll call here. Trustee Andrade Zuniga,
Present.
Trustee Land,
Present.
Trustee Lees Dwyer,
Present.
Trustee Hanley.
Yes,
Okay, and I'm here. So we have all 5 of us here. And there does not appear to be communications to the Board of Trustees. Allegiance, communications, public and our governing board comments. Let me see. I think we had one general comment today. Is that correct?
Yes,
Ms.
yes, sir, that's correct. We have Ray on, and he's been promoted.
Good evening.
Good evening, SMUHSD board. My name is Ryan. I'm a former SMUHSD student. I'm speaking to you today in regards to street safety around SMUHSD schools, specifically San Mateo High School. San Mateo High is bordered some various dangerous streets that have been the site of serious and fatal collisions, and including a recent, luckily non-fatal collision involving a student on Poplar Avenue, I believe. Humboldt Street has seen deadly and serious collisions involving cyclists and motorists, and I'm concerned about street safety overall around schools. And I've heard from countless parents and children who say that they do not feel safe walking or biking to school in general. And as a school district, I think it's important to take a stand for streets near schools in San Mateo. Recently, San Mateo adopted a slow streets near school policy with advocacy from a group that I'm part of, Move San Mateo, and also advocacy from your district and SMUHSD. We were successful in passing slower speed limits, which is a great thing. However, while reducing speed limits near schools is an important first step in making our streets safer for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists, it does not in and of itself meaningfully reduce speeds or reduce the number of cars on the road, which is the biggest threat to our children on our streets. We have to physically redesign our streets to ensure that cars go slower and ensure that bicyclists and pedestrians have safe space to ride or walk on our streets. And that includes Humboldt Street and Poplar Avenue, where the city has proposed a bike lanes project with traffic calming measures as well. So I would ask that the board getting parking in the neighborhood who are concerned about parking removal. Did I cut out for a second?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just
Where
at your ask, what was your ask, I think, of the board, where you need to
Okay.
start again.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll start with the ask. So that the ask is for the board to consider supporting the North Central bike lane project, keeping in mind that the city is investigating parking policy options to mitigate parking options for residents of North Central who have valid concerns regarding parking removal, and the ability to mitigate that through various solutions like shared use of lots overnight, residential parking permit programs, and other policies to help mitigate this, while understanding that safety of kids and primarily low-income people who are biking on the streets in the neighborhood should take an important place in our minds and thoughts. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. It looks like, and Trustee Hanley, did you raise your hand?
yeah, just for governing board comments.
Okay. Yeah, because that box had its hand up when Lihia was in the box, and I'm like, is the hand stuck or is okay? Well, I'm going
Confusing.
left to right. Trustee Hanley.
Good evening. I wanted to comment on a couple things this evening. One, I think probably all school board members and others in the education community are affected when you have an incident like the Oxford school shooting, which occurred a couple weeks ago. We've had 23 school shootings since August 1st. So more than one a week. Again, it's just a pattern ever since, schools have been open for the last few years. We only got a break when we closed the schools. There's just no other country in the world that has this happen. I don't know if any other country trains 5-year-olds on active shooter drills. And it's just unfortunate. It's necessary that we do this, but it's in some ways tragic that we do this. I don't want a moment of silence. We don't need a moment of silence. We need a moment of action. And so what I would encourage people to do is write a check, write more than one check. Write a check there's organizations that are out there advocating for gun safety. You can Google them. There's several of them that are doing great work. Write a check to organizations working in, and they're gradually winning. They're winning at state level, and then write a check to people running against these extremists in Congress, particularly in the Senate. But there's extremists in the House. Write a check to the opponents of these people. We need to defeat these people. We are winning. It's a long battle. It's been, more than 10 years since the shooting at the grade school, we just need to keep working on it. But it is a movement that is gradually winning, and we need to keep winning. And that happens through action, through demonstration, but it has to have money behind it. And this just continues. We had another shooting since Oxford. Luckily, not as many people shot, but it just continues week after week after week. What is this doing to kids? That you can imagine if there were shootings at office buildings, every single week, and we were, adults were going to office buildings knowing that office buildings were being shot up every single week. This is just craziness. We need to continue to work on stopping this, and there are sensible, logical safety laws that can be passed and implemented that will certainly mitigate this and reduce it. And this needs to happen. So that's the first thing I want to emphasize as we're moving forward. The second is we continue to have around 1,000 students in our district that are unvaccinated. And this is a public health, public safety risk that's unnecessary. We've required vaccination against deadly diseases, dangerous diseases in California for 120 years. This is not revolutionary public policy. We need to push back against this extremist, conspiracy-oriented thinking that just doesn't make any sense. There's billions, literally billions of doses of vaccine that have been given out in the last year worldwide. 200 million people in the United States are vaccinated. We need to end this pandemic. The way we're going to end this pandemic is get people vaccinated. having unvaccinated students in public schools is a health risk, is a public health risk, is a public safety risk. So I really want a discussion in the January meeting of a vaccine mandate for this district. All of our kids are eligible to be vaccinated. We can put in exemptions for legitimate reasons. And you can see the dangers that the pandemic imposes. We've had a doubling in San Mateo County of school infections since Thanksgiving. The Omicron variant is looking like it's more infectious, but Delta is still the major infectious variant out there, and it's causing a lot of disease. So we need to take action, and we need to protect students. We need to protect each other. And having unvaccinated students in school is not safe. And when there's an alternative and there's options for available, we need to implement those. So I'm really calling that we need to have that discussion at the January meeting and take action on it. So beyond that, I know this has been it's been a tough year. So I hope everybody takes some time over the next few weeks, over the holidays, get some rest, and have some enjoyable time with family and friends. Take some precautionary measures. Don't do anything crazy. Wear a mask if you're indoors with a whole lot of people. But I hope you have a very restful and enjoyable holiday season.
Thank you, Trustee Hanley. Trustee Land.
Thank you, President Griffin. I'm just going to echo a little bit of what Trustee Hanley said about the shootings. I mean, it wasn't so long ago that we hosted Parkland high school students in their advocacy for gun control in our auditorium, and I was very proud to see that and the right direction, as Mr. Hanley had said. But obviously, things haven't changed nearly enough, and we have to do more. So I hope we can find some way to which to do that. I was just going to mention that I really enjoyed the time last week to be part of the California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly for 2 days, and then going to the conference with my fellow colleagues and Superintendent Skelly. I find this conference, I'm glad we came together. This is the first time that it wasn't virtual, it was actually in person in San Diego. And
Yeah.
I think it was brave that we did that. And it was important, and the speakers were incredible. I just want to highlight a few things. My favorite speaker was Dr. Victor Rios. He is doing a lot of great work. He really just talking about something that we've talked about here, which is Maslow, you have to Maslow before you can bloom, which is we need to take care of the needs of our students and the health of our students, the food needs, and everything first before we can really have them thrive and be at their highest potential. And it's something that really came through in his speech and his lecture afterwards. I hope he can come to visit us. I was going to outreach to Dr. Kemke to see if we can get him to come, because the equity work that he does is incredible and really talks about the highlights of students in need and how to be that. He was one of those students. I pretty much was crying most of the time during listening to his speech, because he was a gang member in Oakland, and he rose above, became this amazing professor in Santa Barbara. He's great books. I bought his 2 books. And I have to say that he also looks like a former student of mine from East Los Angeles. So I really was touched when I met him. So anyway, that plus the conference itself was incredible. It was really good to see what was going on. I learned quite a bit, and I want to thank San Mateo Union High School District for supporting us going to this conference. Thank you.
Yeah, Roddy Zuniga.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that we are on Ramaytush Ohlone land. And I wanted to thank Trustee Henley for what he said. It's unfortunate that we've become, I know I have become even desensitized to some of the shootings. It's not as effective as it used to be in my heart, unfortunately, because there's so many so frequently. And he's absolutely right in terms of lobbying for things that we want and supporting causes that will bring an important voice to the greater good, and that's gun control. You know, for whatever people think, I just think that we need to protect our young people and our communities. So thank you, Trustee Hanley, for bringing that up. I just wanted to acknowledge that this is National Human Rights Month, and that goes along with gun control and everything that we're talking about with that. It's also, it was World Disability Day on Friday, December 3rd. So I wanted to acknowledge all peoples across the world that are living with a disability, that you are seen and that we see you and we care. I also wanted to acknowledge that I didn't get a chance to say, last month, I believe there was Trans Remembrance Day. And I wanted to say that I have friends that, in that community that we have lost. And so I wanted to acknowledge all people that have lost somebody or that is themselves dealing with a lot of hate. Again, we see you and we care. I wanted to acknowledge the bridge soccer teams. On October 30th, San Mateo played against Hillsdale and they won. But I just wanted to acknowledge that program because it's so great for our students, especially our newcomers that need to find community and need to feel in community. So thank you, Dr. Showman and Brett Stevenson for all of your efforts with for our newcomer communities and our ELD communities in Bridge. Like Trustee Henley said, please get vaccinated. The county has a lot of great resources. There is a mobile vaccination option in the event that you cannot get vaccinated in person. I'm actually utilizing that. So it works and it's helpful. I know that there are going to be a lot of clinics through the county through the holidays. So if you're interested, go on to the San Mateo County Health website. There are some, I believe, in the southern part of our county up to the 31st of December. People do have to make appointments, but it's important. And if you need a vaccine for a booster, please do so. It's extremely important. It's been affecting a lot of us significantly. And also congratulations to our Peninsula High School and our Bridge students on their academic achievements. They have been recognized recently and will be recognized on Monday. And thank you to our interpreter. I know it's not easy. I've been a translator before and it can get pretty tough. So thank you. And I'm glad to the district for providing this for our families. So yeah, if anybody has any access needs, to please reach out, whether it be ASL interpretation or documents in other languages. Please know that we do provide that. So thank you. And yes, it's so great to be part of the School Board Association conferences and all of the great information. Yes, Dr. Rios is fabulous. I've seen him speak many times and always hits home. We need to protect our students and their environments and the way that they learn. So thank you.
Okay.
Lee's Dwyer.
Okay. Oh, I'm not muted. I agree that gun access to guns is a very big issue in this country, and they don't belong in schools on anyone. as far as I'm concerned. I think there should be no guns anywhere near schools carried by anyone, child or adult. Years ago, I was traveling and I was on an airplane and I was in that big middle row that they used to have. I don't know if they have it anymore. And the two people on either side of me started a conversation. The lady pulled out her gun and showed it to the other guy because they were comparing their weapons. And I was sitting there thinking, how did I get here? How do I get out of here? What was I thinking taking this middle seat? Luckily, I had an option. I could move. But, students don't. Someone brings a gun into school, and we need to make sure that everyone is safe. And we need to also, I think we've taken great strides in wellness and identifying students who are struggling with whatever issues. And hopefully we can identify things before they become someone showing their gun at school, which should absolutely never happen. I would love to get the book after Greg is done reading them. I would love to read them, and I won't eat while I read them. So they'll come back to you as clean as when you hand it to me. I went to part of CSBA is the California Council of School Attorneys. So I went to that conference last week, and it was excellent. And we talked a lot about student speech, technology and student privacy, their current case law, just all sorts of interesting things. But the one that really hit me was the one called Let's Talk Trash, because we're coming into a new era of recycling. Finally, I compost everything. If it could be composted, it's composted. So I'm always sorting everything in my house before it goes out. And so now we, as a school district, all school districts in California are going to be sorting everything. And I think it's going to be a good lesson for all of us. And it's probably going to lead to a lot of change in homes, which I look forward to, because I believe we just have too much waste, and how we handle it could be improved. But one thing also that they said, which I thought was really cool, is that, and this was brought to us by the students when they spoke to us, we had all the students here, they were complaining about the waste of food. And one of this part of SB 1383 is that we will be required to recover edible food. And we have to put processes in place to not waste food. So if you're supposed to take the carrots, you really don't want them, there's a place for you to put them. So I think that's excellent. I think we're going to make much better use of our resources, and we really need to. So I look forward to the implementation. I know Yancey's got meetings and a lot going on with this, and we have leaders throughout the district who are working on this. I think we got an email on it today. So I really look forward to our efforts, and I hope that we can lead our communities in this regard, because I know, looking around even my own neighborhood, people are not using the recycling compost. I see trash cans, and really there should be very little trash. So anyway, thank you. I look forward to our meeting, the rest of our meeting.
Okay, well, I just have a quick comment. I did not feel like making the trek to San Diego, so I am in the CSBA conference now, and I actually attended this morning's session with Dr. Rios, and what is it? C. Maestra. He told some great stories, and and that's his passion. I can tell from that. I enjoyed that, and then I attended a workforce housing how-to, and it had detailed instructions. Because last year I attended, I think, or maybe the year before, it was Jefferson talking about how they were able to build. The other thing I noticed on the agenda is there is a lot of wellness and safety issues, workshops. And so I do want to hear what people are doing to keep schools safe and to provide proper care for students when they're right there really struggling or feeling stressful. So anyway, I think that's thank everybody for their public comments and comments, and we better move on and get to the agenda. So Kay, recognitions.
Thank you very much. Tonight we have the pleasure of recognizing two groups of girls volleyball champions here. The first is the Burlingame Panthers under the great leadership of Mr. Paul Belzer. I've never seen him play volleyball, but somehow he produces great volleyball players here. They were the Central Coast section champions here. Mr. Bells, I'm going to turn this over to you. I think you've got your coach here. Some of you ladies who are on the team, if you could turn your screen on so we can take a look at you here, that would be great. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Belzer.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Skelly. Good evening, President Griffin, members of the board, all our guests. It's a real pleasure to introduce our coach, Nick Monroe, new to Burlingame this year, but has taken on a program that has done, I think, a good job of building a consistent program, which he brought his style and his leadership to our team this year. Really great senior leadership. Emma, thank you for logging on. Our other Panthers, if you're there, please do show your cameras. But great senior leadership, great depth throughout the whole team. You could just really tell the camaraderie both on the court and really around campus. So it's a real pleasure to introduce Coach Monroe to say a few things about our team. So thank you again for recognizing us. And Coach Monroe, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Good evening. It was a pleasure to be a coach this year. It's my first year at Burlingame. I live in the East Bay, so commuting over here was different for me. But I enjoyed it. I was welcomed by staff, by players, by students. We had a lot of support throughout the whole season. Going into it, wasn't sure what I was going to get, but I was very fortunate to have a good group of girls that love volleyball, wanted to get better, and then also wanted to try to take their game to the next level. And I think as a coach, that's part of my job is trying to elevate as much as I can. And we did that. I think we peaked at the very right time. That's the main thing in sports, is peaking when it comes to playoffs. And I think that's what we did. We took care of CCS pretty easily without dropping a set. We were 2 matches away from making it to the state finals, which would have been a great feat. But nonetheless, I'm very, very honored to be here and continue to build the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Coach Monroe, and all you ladies. Do you have a lot of kids coming back, Coach? You want to just tell us a little bit about next season before we sign you off and bring on the next bunch?
Yeah, definitely. I actually have a pretty young team. I'm graduating 4 seniors. I had, I think, 5 sophomores on the team, 1 freshman, I think 4 juniors. So I have a lot of returners coming back. So I'm looking forward to running it back next year. I guess you kind of say we went back-to-back years because there was no playoffs in 2020. So I'm trying to make it 3 straight like the Lakers.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't like the Lakers here. So this is a Warrior town. But anyway, Coach, thank you. No pressure next year. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your coaching.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Next, we have Mr. Gilbert here, who is the principal at Hillsdale. I know this team is special to him for a lot of different reasons. Mr. Gilbert, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I know you can talk about the team here this year.
Thank you, Dr. Skelly and President Griffin, members of the board. It really is, it's a special moment to be able to introduce Coach Crump, this entire team. It's been a program that's been on the rise for several years, and we missed out last year, but this team really picked it up where we'd left off. And to be able to see this, not just as administrator, but having been a parent in this program now for the last 5 years, love to see the athletes now. Turn your cameras on so we can see you guys. I want to thank Coach Crump again for his leadership. It's just been an amazing experience, and particularly the district to support the program as we had the opportunity to go down and play in the state championship game in Southern California. Your generosity around the travel created an event that our athletes will never, ever forget. So congratulations to everybody. Thank you again to the district and Coach Crump. A few words about this amazing team.
You're muted. You're muted, Coach.
There you go. Coach is unmuted now. Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you guys. It's been an amazing and historical season for Hillsdale High School girls varsity volleyball team. I've been at it 9 years at the school, and I've watched the growth of our program and the success the team had this. It's just amazing. We finished our season overall at 27-3 overall record. Preseason 6-0 in our preseason, which was fantastic. and 14-0 in the Bay Division and Bay Division champions. CCS, we did well there, but when it came down to CIF NorCal championships, we won the championships there in Sacramento. And then we went to state championships and we were runner-up in state championships. I'm just so proud of this team and their accomplishments this year and what they have achieved. It's just awesome. Girls, thank you. And thank you for it.
We appreciate you coming. Mr. Gilbert, I know you have followed this team particularly closely, given your daughter is on the team here as a senior this year. But it's just really been, it's just so wonderful. You know, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of Title IX and the opportunities for female students to be equal to those of the boys, and to see what you guys have been able to accomplish, ladies, and then to go to state and represent our district so well. We certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, I think that's it. You guys go back to studying for finals, huh? Next week. Get busy. No more watching the board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have an item they want to pull? If not, we'll entertain a motion. Trustee Hanley's making a motion with his mic muted.
I think that the contract is on twice. The contract is on our agenda later under special reports and appearances, the revised proposal for restorative equity partnership.
It's on there twice. Yes.
Yeah. So we should probably pull that off unless, you know, if we approve it now, then there's no real reason to bring it up later.
So whatever the board's pleasure, you're right, you should only do it once. We're happy to take this one off and then discuss it when we do the item.
Motion.
Doesn't matter. Let's just do it. I approve the consent agenda. I make a motion.
As presented.
As presented.
Second.
Okay, we got Trustee Lamb with the motion, Trustee Lees Dwyer with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga,
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes, and the consent agenda as presented passes 5-0. And then we can move on to regular reports. Report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. I was mentioned earlier that we are 1 day short of the deadline for reorganizing the board. You know, we're scheduled to have that item. It should be 10 minutes on Monday. However, if we take our time on the board here and get past midnight, then we might be able to approve it. I don't think that's what you want.
It's not agendized. We can't do it.
Yep.
It's on the agenda here.
It is
but for the wrong day. It's on the agenda for the wrong day.
Yes, okay, but we're not going to be here after midnight.
No.
So I do want to recognize Carrie Velez, who will be speaking here in a few minutes. She is the CSEA president. This is her last meeting representing CSEA. She may give you an update on leadership there, but we certainly appreciate, Carrie, your leadership of the group. I enjoyed our conversation last week about where you are, and even though you've submitted your retirement and you're living in Texas, your continued participation and advocacy for our employees is certainly appreciated. So thank you very much. I also want to recognize our outgoing board president, Mr. Robert Griffin. Bob, I don't know how long you've been how many times you've done the presidency, but this was a hard year to do that with all the technology and with Zoom meetings and all those things. But you did such a fantastic job here, and we're deeply appreciative of your service. And I have this this memento here of your experience that I'll make sure that gets to your house and recognizes your contribution. So thank you very much for that. Next week we start finals, and that the semester ends on the 17th. I think it's been a really successful semester. I think, given all the challenges that we've had with the pandemic, our staff, our students, the cooperation of our community, our ability to do exemplary work for our students in a really tough environment, and the cooperation and hard work of everybody is really inspiring. So it was mentioned we were down at the CSBA conference, and one of my takeaways that I mentioned was, there are other communities that are just being torn apart right now. And yes, we have our disagreements, but we're not having people, yelling and screaming in our board meetings and creating unsafe environments at our schools. So we do have a lot to be grateful for on that front. If you could put that slide up. We've taken to updating the board at meetings about where we stand with vaccinations. Our staff, we're at about 96%. This is an update since the last board meeting on 11/7, and brings us through 12/2. The data's better today on a little bit later, but we have 102 students who are fully vaccinated and another 75 who have received at least one vaccine. At the last meeting, I mentioned that we had some challenges at San Mateo High School and at Cappuccino. Their numbers are moving up, and we're really pleased to see those numbers much more comparable to where we were. And then you're also seeing Peninsula High School students start to get vaccinated. We're deeply appreciative of the Stanford Health Band that comes and provides vaccinations for our students, and we'll continue at this, continue to make this a focus. We'll also be providing, when we return from the vacation, we're going to build an expectation that everybody is tested, vaccinated or not, when they return to school. Our feeling is that that's one of the ways that we can make sure that we can continue to open safely once we get back in person. I will say that our students who aren't vaccinated are cooperating with the testing, and I do think it's made a difference in finding some students who are not vaccinated or vaccinated, and also help to reduce the spread of our cases here. And we're also seeing a lot more students test because they have to. So unvaccinated students who previously weren't testing, your policy is leading more of them to be tested over this break or at any time. So that's good. I think that's all I have to report tonight. Once again, it's been a really successful semester, and we're looking forward to a break here for the next, I think it's 17 days. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you for your report. Report of the student board member. Taylor, good evening.
Good evening, President Griffin. Yeah, hello. Hello, everyone. Superintendent Skelly, President Griffin, members of the board, and everyone here in the audience. Thank you so much for having me tonight. First off, building off what Trustees Andrade Zuniga mentioned earlier, this past November was annual National Indigenous Americans Heritage Month, and as every November, it is important for us to honor the cultures of the countless indigenous tribes of North America, as well as acknowledge their struggles, both past and present, and also understand that we are living on land forcefully taken from them centuries ago. Furthermore, I'd also like to recognize that the Jewish celebration of Hanukkah ended this past Monday. So for any of you who practice, hope you had a happy Hanukkah. Our various schools within the district and the district itself celebrate the diversity of our countless students and staff, honoring their traditions and cultures of our communities. As many students such as myself are in the midst of preparing for our semester finals and readying ourselves for the end of this very eventful year, it's important for us to recognize that the past months have been filled with many successes, from the amazing sportsmanship of our football athletes, as we've seen with our girls volleyball team. Congratulations, you guys. As well as the diligent work of our great staff, teachers, and administration. So with the holidays approaching, especially regarding uncertainty regarding the new variant, it's important for us to all remember the truth that even though that the COVID-19 pandemic has really tested us, and many of us here, not only in our community, not only in the state of California, but the entire world, have had loved ones affected by COVID or even lost loved ones to COVID. Even these tough times, we honor their legacies and celebrate the memories we share with them and cherish their lives. In the midst of so many national and international issues, and despite all the chaos and challenges, we still have each other and we still made it through the year, no matter what. And let's make it like another great year. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. A report of the District Teachers Association, Rachel Lauderdale. Good evening.
Good evening, President Griffin, Board of Trustees, district leadership, and community members. It's nice to see you all again. As the girls varsity soccer head coach at Hillsdale, I'm elated to see the success of our girls volleyball team and all of our fall sports. Football, girls golf, cross country, all had fantastic season at Hillsdale. These are very big shoes to fill into the winter season. A huge congratulations to all of our fall athletes across the whole district. I'll make it brief tonight, but I would first like to celebrate and shout out our members who are in their first, second, and third year of education. We have many teachers who only know what it is like to teach and educate in a global pandemic. Although many people think we are back to normal, our newer educators are working through conditions unlike any in our history. They face circumstances in their first few years that no one has faced in their whole life and still show up to support our students every day. I'm truly in awe of their passion and commitment to their work. I applaud them and encourage them to keep fighting. We will make it through this. In May, our Equity and Social Justice Committee, formerly known as the Black Lives Matter Task Force, presented many actionable deliverables to push our district towards anti-racism. We're pleased to see the small steps towards equity that the district is taking at the direction of Dr. Julia Kemke. Personally, I am proud to be part of the district's Equity Advisory Committee, which is one of the most diverse committees I've sat on in my 11 years of education. As an association, we hope the district continues to work with our members, students, families, and our community to create actionable equity policies and practices. Moreover, we hope that the board and district leadership work hard to learn with us in order to reach the committee and district's equity mission and vision. We need your support and dedication, no matter the pushback. We are just in the beginning of this work, and there's much to do. We would also like to highlight our brothers and sisters at Peninsula High School. They work tirelessly to support our 200+ students most marginalized by our systems. They deserve the space, clean water, and resources to ensure that they can create brave spaces centered in their student experiences. We hope you listen to their needs and take action to make sure that they have the basic necessities to educate their student body. We hope that they will have space on the board agenda so that they can advocate for the changes necessary to provide their students a fair and equitable education. Meeting their needs is the only way to make sure our district is truly equitable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Report of CSEA Chapter 519 Representative Carrie Velez. Good evening.
Good evening, President Griffin, members of the board, Dr. Skelly, and everyone here tonight. Report of the CSEA will be short. As I mentioned last month, CSEA's third annual holiday fundraiser for San Mateo Union High School District students most in need has been in action for the past month and coming to a close this Friday, December 10th. We had been asking for one $25 Target gift card from our members. We are happy to say all other classifications have donated cards as well. Thank you. Over the past 2 years, the number of students in need were 700 to 800 students. This year, we were surprised to learn that the number of students in need has doubled. We are hoping, along with other fundraisers throughout our district, like ours, each student will receive a gift card. Okay, off topic for a moment. I would like to say thank you for listening to CSEA's message each month from me for the past 2 years. It has been a wild 2 years, nothing like I thought it would be. I also would like to thank those that have reached out to me in the past few months just to say hi. It means to me more than you will ever know. President Griffin, and Dr. Skelly, Kevin, I had you on the top of my screen and now I can't see you. Oh, there you are. I have a certificate of recognition on my desk that I actually received a couple of months ago by you both. I look at it each day. It holds as a reminder of my time at the district from the rocky beginning to a comfortable place that I could call home. I have made many happy memories, so many special friendships over the past years. This last board meeting of the 2021 year will be my last board meeting. If I haven't said it, thank you all very much. Good night, happy holidays. And actually, this is quite appropriate if you can, oh, you can't see my certificate. The lining is pink. So I know, Kevin, you know exactly what I'm referring to.
Trustees Lees Dwyer, you look like you're itching to say something.
Oops.
You just muted yourself.
I was trying to be so good to be muted before. Carrie, you've done an amazing job. I love listening to you. You present things, even though sometimes, there's things we need to hear. You do it in such a way that I want to hear it. I want to hear it anyway, but you've just been such a great presence. And I have so much respect for you. So I want to thank you for all of your work and wish you the best down there in that southern state. So.
Okay, well, thank you.
Ditto.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the San Mateo Adult School Teachers Association. Paula Ackerman, good evening. There
Good
you go.
evening, everyone. It's nice to see all of you, Dr. Skelly, Dr. Black, on all of you regents working so hard. It's wonderful to hear all the things that the high schools are doing. It reminds me of when my girls went. And I have some really good news from the adult school. Our new ESL registration has started for the spring of 2022. In the last 2 weeks, we have over 150 new students have come to take their CASAS test, their writing test, as well as having oral interviews. There will be more testing next week, as well as the first week in January. The new students were also given training in how to navigate onto Zoom and as they use their basic computer skills. The ESL students collected 4 bags of warm coats for the One Warm Coat project. Cynthia and her students practice sustainability in downsizing the district learning program. Deconstruct to reconstruct, so we have a greener world. Instead of putting things in the trash, put them in landfill. They managed to get 25 bags of paper, which were recycled, 20 bags of donations and that went to scrap, 2 boxes of DVDs and lessons that were given to students who wanted them. Sheet protectors and binder rings were saved to use again. Our wonderful student ambassadors are working very hard to help the new students feel welcome, help them register, learn new school routines and resources. But last and not least, our ESL teachers are finding creative ways to engage students in our community spirit. Jessica's students wrote holiday cards for nursing home residents, for one example, and Cynthia's students made cards from recycled materials. So at our place, like you, we never have a dull moment, and we wonder if this will always continue because it makes us so excited to be able to help and learn and watch, just as you do. We never have a dull moment. And fortunately, it's been perfect until, and as it will also continue. So as I say, we hope everyone has a relaxing and enjoyable holiday season with family and friends. It's time to sit back and relax and keep an eye on things. So to all of you, have a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year and a happy Hanukkah and a Kwanzaa Day and a happy New Year. See you again, folks.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to special reports and appearances. N1 Equity Update, Dr. Kimke.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. And there is a presentation to go along with this. I am here with a wonderful group of people who is going to speak to all of the work that we've been doing around equity. And it is without this group that we would not have made progress. So I'm honored to present with them, and they're going to take time to introduce themselves, but they are members of our Equity Advisory Committee, teacher leaders in the district who are moving this work forward. You can go to the next slide. So the equity vision and mission, which was adopted in 2020, is what we aspire to, and it guides the equity work across our system. As we know, most districts across the country and nation have set forth a similar vision and aligned it to their strategic plan. And most school systems have acknowledged that it's a moral imperative to address the persistent and racialized outcomes of school systems. And we have a district have done this as well. We're going to share how we're moving towards our vision, and we are addressing several of the goals that we have adopted as a district, but we're not looking at data per se. Tonight's presentation is about the transformational work, and the nature of that work is slightly different than what we usually talk about at our boards. So you'll hear a bit about that, and it is in community with the stakeholders that you'll hear from tonight. We go to the next slide. So just wanted to center us on that we're going to be talking about the why and how we're doing this as a community, not necessarily all of the what. We often update on the what. So tonight's about how we're intentionally focusing our time to think about our approach to those persistent gaps that all school systems face. And we know that they must be attended to differently, and our team here will explain why they need to be attended to differently and how we go about doing that work. One of our approaches and what we've asked of all of our staff to engage in is conversations about race and racism. And tonight is an invitation for you as the board, as well as our larger community here, to engage in this conversation and join our collective work towards addressing the systemic inequities that we experience. You can go to the next slide. And prepared this slide to take a look at the work that we've been doing over the last few years in the service of equity. And it only shows a snapshot. There are many works that have happened at the school level, PLC level, and equity teams that have been working at the school. But the purpose of sharing this slide is to show the major initiatives or events that have happened over the past few years and the increase in kind of intensity and work that has happened since the pandemic. We know that the work has always been important. It's always been the moral imperative schools to be a leavening force in students' lives. But over the last year, it's intensified, especially locally here with the grand jury report. So some of the work we talk about is addressing what the grand jury indicated in their report to us. And you can also see, and you'll hear a bit about the Equity Advisory Committee and their evolution, and as well as our contracts and support through partners, expert partners in this field, National Equity Project, Shane Saphir and Joe Truss, as well as in important implementations like the ethnic studies courses that was implemented under the leadership of Dr. Showman. And I think one of the most important things to take a look at is development of collaboration across our schools. Our high schools tend to be in silos. The work that we're trying to represent tonight is us coming together as a collective to address this. You can go to the next slide. So I share this concept from the National Equity Project, and this is how we're redefining collaboration. Oftentimes we talk about how we want to design programs, schools for our students, and the idea that we are presenting and kind of the value that we're working from is that we're designing for, instead of for, we're designing with our community. And this also requires a different approach from our leadership, and us as leaders, me included, and everyone on the call, including our teacher leaders to everyone in our schools, it's that we move ourselves from being a hero about the work and that we're hosting this as a team. And I'll use a quote from Margaret Wheatley, who's done a lot of writing in this area. She says, a host leader realizes that their organization or community is rich in resources, and that the easiest way to discover these is to bring a diverse people together in conversations that matter. People who didn't like each other, people who discounted and ignored each other, people who felt invisible, neglected, left out. These are the people who can emerge from their boxes and labels to become interesting, engaged colleagues and citizens. And so we have much work to do in this area, but it is some of what you'll see represented tonight. And I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Mary Young, who's going to speak a little bit about the collaboration. And you can go to the next slide.
Members of the county office have been involved in the work of the district toward better student outcomes because of the accountability and compliance requirements set by federal and state entities. The process that has been designed by San Mateo Union is a model for our county in the ways that the Equity Advisory seeks input from educational partners to inform the work of local plans that determine how students and families are served, particularly those of historically marginalized groups. The collaborative effort to engage in liberatory design from the voices of students, families, community members, and staff shows a district that is working beyond compliance toward a vision of co-constructing for inclusion and equity. Next slide, please.
And now Ms. Jenny Way, a teacher from Aragon, is going to speak on this slide.
Thanks. At this point in the presentation, we would probably be showing you some survey data, and we're still doing the work, the traditional and comfortable work of gathering and collecting data. But right now, the innovative and inspiring processes that we're engaging in are the product. Our process is the product. And at this stage, we're surfacing areas of really needed growth. Joe Trust and Shane Saphir have been helping us shift our relationship to metrics, not only by introducing us to gathering street data, but also leading us to understand that surfacing all of these areas is the work for now. And just as we have to build our own tools for equity because the existing ones will not dismantle intrinsic injustice, we have to acknowledge that we have to listen for our metrics. And while I've been inspired in examining data with colleagues, I also noticed that these numbers are predictable, and the questions and the frameworks for examination, they're also predictable. It takes major shifts in our relationship to data to create new structures to honor and collect feedback in order to weave accountability throughout the process, not simply end with it and expect a reckoning. That process, the old process, that sets us up for indictment, not growth. For example, if we see students and families as our clients, we establish a one-way lane of accountability in which the district presents those predictable results and then repeats cycles of inequity. If we imagine being a community with each other, then accountability and therefore power is shared. We invite each other to participate. We reveal next steps through listening, through hearing each other's stories. We seek truths that make us uncomfortable and defensive, and we listen to that discomfort. We relinquish performative perfectionism. We become accountable in that process, not just as a reaction to a result. And the process becomes the product. And we're in the process of bringing what was once unknown, or perhaps more accurately, not believed, into our knowing, understanding, and belief. I'm going to pass it to Marlo.
Thank you, Jenny. Wonderful seeing you all once again, board members, good evening. So my name is Marlo Bagsic. I represent PHS. I'm the MTSS coordinator as well as PD coordinator. And I have to speak on our work as a PD. The anti-racist school and community transformation has opened many doors of information and questions. We are in uncharted territories, and naturally there are going to be apprehensions, fears, and unknowns. But instead of leading with that, we should walk through these doors as a means of possibilities, because through them, we will see the true needs our communities are faced with. What awaits beyond these doors are the untold stories, the once silenced narrative, the potential to heal our community, and the possibility to free many of our students of burdens they shouldn't be holding on to in order to simply exist. This collective vulnerability, this process, as Jenny has just highlighted, in aiming towards providing true equity for all is highly, highly complex. But the rewards are exponential and will build a community that aims to unite and not divide. Representing PHS, where we serve the students closest to the margins, we have already begun to feel the wide impact this work has done. It has begun to release an ongoing tension and anxiety to be seen and heard during a time where it's detrimental that the voices of those that are marginalized are uplifted and centered. But what does this say about what has existed prior? That's the real question here. It goes to say that there is much to be heard, much to be learned, and much to be worked on together so that everyone can feel a sense of safety to exist and be given truer opportunities of success. But when you have the privilege, like myself, to work directly with this community, it is an undeniable truth that what we're aiming for can be achieved on a wider level, because the transformations my students show me every year, every single day, this is the source of my drive, my passions, and my motivations that bring me here to speak their truth in front of you. This work is an invitation to all members of the community to lean in on, from board members to students, to the generations of students who have yet to reach our schools, and to everyone in between. We hope that you hear us today. And with that, if you could go to the next slide, I'll pass it on to Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Poblete. I'm an English teacher and the PD and MTSS coordinator at Hillsdale High School. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Youth Catalyst Liberatory Leadership program at our school. Each site in the district, well, actually it started with the comprehensive high schools in our district and is now extending to Middle College and Peninsula High School, has what is called the YCLL. What this is faculty and staff members were asked to nominate students who have shown leadership, intellectual curiosity, who are engaged in issues of equity and social justice in their classes. But what makes these students particularly special is that they have these skills based on their own observations, their own life experiences, and their own individual activism outside of the school structure. But they haven't necessarily been in student government or organizations and clubs on campus. So far, we've met 2 times as a group. There are about 25 to 30 active participants that are on our site, and it's facilitated by outside facilitators from the designated from the district. And at first, I was a little skeptical, but after observing how the students interact and the importance of affinity groups on our campus, I realized the value and the worth of it. All of the students are BIPOC. They span across all grade levels and houses and groups. And I've seen them connect in a very natural way. They're open, they're vulnerable. They see each other as human beings. They're respectful, and they are passionate and driven. So eventually, I hope that this group becomes part of a standing equity committee at Hillsdale, and that maybe there will be a cross-district kind of networking connection. I have 2 students who are going to speak, and then I'm going to read one student's statement about their experience as part of this group. So I will turn this over to Jasmine Reyes.
Hi, my name's Jasmine. And so first off, I want to say thank you to Ms. Poblete for being like great and always accepting us. Number one, I kind of want to say my experience in that group has been really like comforting and welcoming. I do think we all do show our vulnerable sides and we feel heard when we're in that group. I feel like we don't really realize how many of us think alike until we're sitting in a room together and kind of just giving our ideas and what we think. I do think that we can make this bigger and show like a lot more power than being silenced. I think we feel heard, and especially knowing that like it's across like multiple grade levels and we're all like different ethnicities and races. I think we all have different experiences and we all share, and I think it's a really great group. I'm kind of excited to see how everything is gonna turn out, and I think this is just the beginning to something that can be really big.
Thank you, Jasmine. Michaela?
Hi. Yeah, I'm like super grateful for the group. It has given me like an opportunity to use my voice. And like before going into the group, I was like really scared to show my like opinion or tell my opinion to anybody. Cause like there's always this feeling of being like invalid. But after going to the group, like, oh shoot. Can you, okay, sorry. My Wi-Fi is like bad. Okay. So as I was saying, it has helped me use my voice. And I think it would be really helpful to like a lot more students in other schools.
Thank you, Michaela. And I'm going to read Leah Simmons. She was unable to join our call today, but I'm going to read what she sent to me about her experience in the group. Sorry. Okay. It's nice to finally be around people like me and be able to talk about things in the community or the system that bother me, especially when I usually can't in class or with other peers, or is usually not encouraged or even discouraged that we do. Having vulnerable and personal conversations like these and groups like these are important because the conversations that we're having about, for example, that privilege is not a character flaw conversation, inevitably transforms into a gateway for change. When you have so many vocal, passionate, and creative people who are willing to use their voices for something that's meaningful to them and meaningful to so many other people, it's bound to create community and to bend the status quo within our community of just saying or just staying silent. I think it's especially important that the group is so different. And I love that we're so different because our differences and the complexities can manifest into so many different ways. And I think that the differences and complexities within one another is going to manifest into something extraordinary. I hope something like student equity can continue, but I hope it's a longer program. And I also hope that people continue to embrace being different. It's great because even though being different can feel so alienating, it can also be a little bit freeing. We're all different, but we're all fighting for the same thing. I hope that people can take their different ideas that they now have the courage to talk about and execute it without fear. And that's from Leah. So thank you to all the students who spoke. And next slide.
Thank you, Melissa, and to the students. It's always difficult to follow students' voices because they're so powerful, but I'll try to speak to this slide and then tell you a little bit more about my own story. So for deep transformational change, we can't just be focused on the things that help operationalize diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The metrics, the process changes, the training and the tools are all important, but they're not enough. And I think we've heard that in the voices of the students, right? That it's these conversations this coming together in a community that matters. So for change to be transformational, it needs to be relational. It has to be about people's stories and the way they see the world, their context and their narrative. We can't strip human beings out of the conversation to make real and lasting change, which is what we're trying to do here with the Equity Advisory Framework and the overall approach to the equity work in the district, not just to understand where we are failing or succeeding in terms of outcomes, but to put it in context of the students, their families, their history, to get past changing some behaviors in response to an event that happened, and to deeply integrate this work into the values and the belief system of the institution. So it becomes integral to how we operate. So I want to, because this is also about stories, I wanted to share my story. I'm a parent of two kids at Burlingame High School. I'm also an immigrant. And for the longest time, and I'm sorry to say that, but for the longest time, my instinct was to keep my head down, to do my work, to raise my children well, and hope that I would be a good immigrant, the one that would be accepted for fitting in. It took 2016 to really jolt me out of my stupor. I've come to believe that, if you're truly patriotic, it's somewhat like good parenting. As a parent, I believe it's my responsibility to point out to my children when they're doing something wrong. Not that they are bad, but that there's a problem and we need to work together to fix it. And just like that, I feel that, if I love my adopted country, my community, I must be willing to see the problems, to acknowledge them, and commit to doing what I can to fix them. So even if we ignore everything else, that the fact that our school district has had racially skewed outcomes means that there are issues that we have not fully examined or understood. And together, as we come together in this equity advisory framework, we arrive at a better understanding of the problems so that together we can fix them. We have to unlearn and relearn, and we can then figure out a way to fix these problems. So I believe that I have to be part of the solution, because otherwise I'm part of the problem. The system, the problem being the system that holds up the status quo. So as a parent, I would like to invite other parents who are listening in to join this conversation, be part of our Equity Advisory Committee, so that with better understanding, we can create solutions that not only right historical wrongs, but benefit all our children. And with that, with my story, I will pass it on to Medina, who can tell you how this looks like in action. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Namrata. Well, as you heard Namrata mention, transformational change is about relational connection, and that means building relationships. And the relationship building that the district has cultivated with the Black Parents Association demonstrates their investment in sharing power. And the sharing of power truly is equity in action, one in which the district has done a great job of living out actually. So as you have listened to us talk about the importance of the equity work that we are currently doing and that is planned for the future, please know that it is not being done in a bubble. The district is not only sharing its power with teachers and students, but it's sharing power with organizations like BPA. So examples of that partnership can be seen in the forms of the fact that BPA was able to bring a financial literacy program to the summer enrichment series that happened over the summer last year, and also in the fact that BPA partners with the district to bring Unity in the Community, which is a virtual town hall, and also the State of the Student Summit. So our partnership is a bright spot for the district and ourselves, but it's also a model of how the district can continue to share power with community organizations. So Jenny Way mentioned listening. Listening is of the utmost importance. So we encourage our decision makers to continue to listen. Listen to what the community and the students need, but also listen to what is not being said. We encourage that so it helps better deliver on the needs of our students and on the community. BPA always says, many hands make for light work. So let's do that work together sharing power in service of our students and the community. And with that, I pass it back to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Medina. I promised Ms. Medina that I would say this with my chest, so here we go. We're ending with an invitation to discourse, to share and accumulate stories, to consider your own stories, board members, and your own relationships to power. Oh, sorry, next slide. To form policy from listening, from walking humbly as we listen to uncomfortable truths. In fact, we've had precedent from this year. Earlier in June, when Board President Griffin listened to the community comments around the Pride and Progress flag request, when he chose to be vulnerable and admitted that he needed to be humble, when he publicly apologized and recentered the conversation for himself by sharing that he, quote, should not have put policy before the people, end quote. That is radical vulnerability, and that is critical reflection. We want to invite you again to be with us, to evolve that beautiful insight from Board President Griffin, and to recognize that people are the policy, that the process is the product. And as you move to discourse around the racial equity board policy, we want to show you your locus of control on this slide. Within the status quo of the lens of systemic oppression, you now have the opportunity to open the doors wider, to disrupt systemic oppression, and to imagine beyond compliance, beyond placating. We invite you to imagine and to discuss, how can every single student feel truly free to learn and to share? And what if we realized our equity vision for all students to learn in an environment that validates them, supports their identities, and all of their intersections? Thank you very much for your time tonight.
And with that, that's the end of our presentation. We can take the slides down if there are questions on this one. The next item is that board policy. So if we have questions for our presenters, I just want to show my gratitude to them. They've put in a lot of time to prepare this, and I just really appreciate the time that they put into this and that they do in a monthly equity advisory committee for the ones that attend there, and all the work that our teacher leaders are doing at the schools.
Thank you. Appreciate the I got to say it's intense. I mean, it was a very good presentation, but it was really intense. I mean, I was looking serious, and it was like, all my brain cells were kind of wobbling around there. So Trustee Land.
First, I just want to say thank you. I think that was an impressive and very important presentation tonight. And I just want to say thank you to all the members who participated in this. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is about the flattening of power, the really sharing of power, the invitation of community. I love that presentation, that part of this presentation, because in my mind, that is what's going to change. I was looking at my own district, and we have an equity committee, and it's very similar, but the power structures are still there, and it's still kind of talked down to. And unity in the community. I remember President Griffin talking about how we need to have it not just be a presentation outward, it needs to be all of us. And I remember him telling us that in his last time, and it changed a little bit, which was great. So I think we do have the elements, and this has been very powerful. And I really want to say thank you to all of the presenters for making this such a strong story. And it is about story. And I'm glad that was brought up as well. So excellent presentation. I embrace it wholeheartedly. And I'm very proud of this district and the board that we are embracing this change. Thank you.
Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
Thank you so much for this presentation. It was really great. I'm so over the moon with knowing that we're doing this type of work. It's super important. I wish this stuff was around when I was young. I mean, there's so many things that we would try to push and change when we were younger, and it just fell on deaf ears because people were not committed to this. And I'm really happy and proud that we are committed to this work. Some of the information that we went through, the different California School Board Association conferences and trainings, has to do exactly with this stuff. And also, I'm really pleased to see that you've included the students' voices in this, because ultimately everything we do and everything we decide on affects them. And this will directly affect how they see themselves in our school districts, in our communities, and just in their future. So thank you. And I was really happy to hear from the students. That is like one of the most important things. All of our experiences are unique. And I'm really glad that we're considering reframing or rethinking about the term BIPOC, because we are not all the same. We should not all be lumped into the same category. And I'm guilty of using the term from time to time as well, without just, I guess, through my own not, thinking. But we shouldn't be lumped into one experience, because that is not true. Recently, I attended this policy webinar through the Disability Rights California, and one of the panelists had mentioned DEI as DEIA, saying diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, because we also need to include our people with disabilities within that, and just access in general, right? Because not everybody has access to certain systems and certain supports. So with that said, I trust that you will include, intersectionality and disability, I guess, needs into your work. I really hope that, we aren't lumping, and I'm not saying that you are, but I'm advocating for not lumping like Indigenous people with being Latinx. We have to remember that certain things are not, they're not the same. And then, I just really want to be part of this. I think this is awesome. I really am so, proud of y'all, and, I'll keep communicating with you to see, what else I can advocate for. I know in our communities, we definitely need some work with our AAPI communities. We're definitely failing in that area. So, or not failing, but we really just need some more TLC. So, I look to you all for that as well. So again, thank you so much. And just keep it up. Thank you.
Trustees Lees Dwyer.
Okay, it's always hard. I can relate to Bob where it's always hard to be, as people go on, a lot of like what you want to say has been said already, which is why I always try to go first so that I don't forget, and I don't get lost in it all. But I was right with Bob. I was like listening so carefully because each of you spoke from your own story, from your own frame of reference. And so I wanted to hear it. And then I wanted to hear the students. So I was like paying such close attention, which was really, I wanted to learn. And so I'm listening to Medina, I'm listening to Amada, I'm listening to Marla. I want to hear what you have to say, because what you're saying is so important, because what you're doing and what we are doing is so important to every student who walks in the door, for every child who goes to school. And if we can do this, if we can grow and reach out, we can influence the elementaries and the preschools so that it begins with when their first experience, that they don't come up to us as freshmen having had experiences that have impacted them in a very bad way, that give them stories that they shouldn't have. So I just appreciate everything that you're doing, and I really look forward to hearing from you again. And you can come to every meeting. So thank you.
Trustee Hanley. You're muted still, Peter.
Yeah, I think this was a very good presentation, and this is work that's going in a very positive direction and bringing out a lot of important points. I want to kind of bring in my perspective as someone who's had a career where I've lived overseas and traveled quite extensively, because I think there's some tweaks that I would make in the board policy where we're talking about white privilege and white supremacy and that sort of thing. And I don't want to minimize that in any way. That's certainly been, a major issue, but I think we have to recognize the racism is not exclusively in the white race. And I think we can't let off the fact that the racism occurs all around the world, and that there are multiple races that engage in racism, and that I think we have to be careful that this doesn't become just about white racism, and because then I think you're in danger of missing elements of racism that could be important. It could be important in our district because we're serving so many different peoples from around the world. As somebody who's lived in different parts of the world and therefore has been a minority in a society, I've heard this and experienced it myself and seen it. So I think we might take a look at some of that language and where we could tweak it to recognize that there's a lot of racism around, and we shouldn't let people off the hook. That racism is bad wherever it's coming from. The other question I guess I had, where we're talking about the LCAP, because we do a lot within the LCAP of trying to target resources and actions and policies in the LCAP on students that have been underserved, I guess from the BIPOC, from Black, Latinx, but also from other communities, low income, and I don't know whether we would be duplicating or even diluting. I don't know whether the superintendent has some comments to make on this, because it seems like we're already making some significant efforts in targeting, in that area. And I don't want to duplicate or dilute our efforts in the LCAP when we're trying to put it together. So I'm just not sure that this is the right vehicle for doing what, I understand the goal of it, and I'm sympathetic to the goal of it, but I think we're already doing it, and we might be better accentuating what we're already doing rather than trying to come up with something that's separate and apart from it.
I'll make a few comments, and then Dr. Kemke, I'll open it up to you, because I know you and I had a brief conversation about this. I think if you look at part of the presentation was its alignment to board goals, and then board goals, as you know, are aligned to the LCAP. So I see a lot of overlap in this effort, and I don't think we want to either dilute, by having this board policy. Hopefully we're focusing our work too on students at the margins and some of the efforts in the LCAP. I don't know, sort of the work of your committee, and then how you use the district goals and then the LCAP as you went forward. So perhaps you can share a little bit of that, Dr. Kempe.
So this board policy is specific to racial equity. So it's going to speak specific to racism, and then the administrative regulations that go along with it are how we outline that we will address, the the articulation of how racism shows up in our organization. And so what I would say about how it relates to the LCAP is that most of the items on, like the ones that are listed out in that AR are all things that we would incorporate into the larger LCAP. What I think is, and part of what we discussed on the Equity Advisory Committee, is that this is an accessible way, and it sets the statement in our board policy as well as administrative regulations and how we go about doing that policy in a more accessible way for the community. As we know, the LCAP has a lot going on in it, and we're required in the LCAP to still spend monies based on students' income level, students with special needs, and English learners, which we will continue to do because we're required to do. And I think Mary Young could speak to some of the compliance that we are engaged in through the Equity Advisory, which includes setting the goals that we have in the LCAP. They saw those, approved them, as well as the metrics, which is a required compliance part of it. This administrative regulation, I think I would see it differently, where it is us putting in words on how we intend to address racial equity issues. So it's aligned to the LCAP, but it is calling something out very specific that was asked of the Equity Advisory Committee. And I will say to Trustee Andrade Zuniga, we had many conversations around some of the terminologies that we use to describe our students and how important it is to use affirming language and not clump. And it's so difficult, but we had a lot of conversations on the committee around that. But that's how I would address this distinction between this board policy and the administrative regulations from the LCAP. The LCAP will incorporate some of those action steps within the goals, and that's all part of that template as well. And I'd say some of them we're already seeing in the LCAP. We'll add a few more that you see showing up here.
Trustee Land, and then I want to make a comment.
Okay. I think one of the distinctions, so I did want to address some of what Peter had said, because again, when we're dealing with racism in this situation, we also have to look at power and power structures and systemic structures. And I think that's something that we're having to address. And I think that's important. And just to elucidate a little bit of what Dr. Kemke was saying, looking at one of the slides is the perfect example of why we need this. Is we're talking about LCAP, we're talking about transactional change. When we're talking about what this policy is, we're really talking about transformational change, and it's right, and it's embodied in what you just told us. So I think that's what we have to take to heart in this situation, and why we're separating it, and why they're two, and they're very important to be together. So I think that says it and illustrates it better than anything.
Okay, well, certainly this has been a stimulating conversation. I've got a couple things to say, and while this facet of equity is focused on racial equity, this kind of goes to a little bit of, there are so many issues we have to fight, and certainly racial equity is one of them. We got sexism, we got classism. There are so many problems that we have walls we have created in our society. And I mean, we've got to change them, and I guess we got to change them one at a time. And I liken my own experiences to unpacking bags and unpacking a couple of bags and thinking I'm all done. And then the more bags I unpack, the more bags I realize I still have yet to deal with. And I have so much to learn about this, because I got to admit, I had a pretty singular lens that I was looking through. And I think it's, I'm learning, but I'm still got a long ways to go. So Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
Sorry, I unmuted myself, then muted myself. I just wanted to say something in response to what you said. A lot of the isms stem from white supremacy. And so I think that a lot of the things that we're trying to dismantle will eventually be dismantled through this work and then going on. So remembering, where the roots of these issues are, there is a lot of colorism and racism and oppression throughout the world, absolutely. But I think we have to really acknowledge the root causes of a lot of things, colonialism, indoctrination, things like that. So, and with that, it's a longer conversation, but I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we have to start somewhere, and we have to address the things that are at hand right now. So, yeah, I appreciate the work and, yeah, whatever we can do to support. Thank you.
Okay, have we transitioned into, or do we actually want to have, because there are some speakers they're asking to speak on the racial equity board policy and administrative regs. Now, we've talked about all these altruistic things, and let's actually shift and actually deal with the policy as it's written and before us. So I guess there's not a discussion or no preamble for the policy. So
we did the preamble just now, I think. So
yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, we have three speakers on N2. Angela Diane, forgive me.
It's Angela Diag.
Okay, yes, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Angela. I attend Middle College and lead the district-wide student equity group with the aid of our advisor, Dr. Kemke. And I wanted to provide commentary on the significance of the racial equity board policy drafted by Dr. Kemke. Anti-racist work starts with education within students. However, we need to include a progressive, inclusive curriculum that is held accountable and works to decolonize the minds of our students. As many of you know, the school system was created to serve mainly white, male, and able-bodied students. The foundation of American academia focuses on Western Eurocentric values, and it's our duty to create a holistic education. Deconstructing and implementing board policies like this and additional support paves the way for a new future in academia for students and faculty of color. We live in a colonized and capitalist society that only benefits those at the top of the hierarchy. Including anti-racist curriculum creates a diverse education that celebrates Black, Indigenous, and people of color. As educators to young minds and prospective thinkers, we need to hold ourselves accountable to make sure that an anti-racist education support and resources are accessible to all students. Neglecting this opportunity only celebrates the hegemonic power that perpetuates erasure of minorities. Perpetuating the erasure of people of color and marginalized minorities is what allows actions like oppression and discrimination to take place. Anti-racism and racial equity stands on the basis of necessity. Please remember that we cannot continue education in its surrounding environments in a manner that centers Eurocentric values as the objective truth. And if uncomfortability comes across as a feeling when presented with topics like these, please ask yourself why. I am speaking tonight for myself as a woman of color and as a student in the district. And hopefully for students of color who are not able to speak tonight, please keep in mind my message as you consider the Racial Equity Board policy for approval in January. Thank you and happy holidays. Stay safe.
Alex Ilupulu, is that close?
Yeah, but what she said, I wasn't speaking.
True that, I think, is the vernacular, I think so. Jennifer Blanco.
Good evening, fellow colleagues and Dr. Skelly, one of your trustees over here in San Bruno Park School District. I'm also, and hello, good evening to all the members who are on the meeting tonight. Thank you for the time to speak. I became a member of the district-wide Equity Advisory Committee. I was invited by our amazing Dr. Kemke. I'm very grateful for this invitation and to be part of this very necessary and amazing work. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Kemke lead this work in our district and everyone who's part of the committee. I just wanted to share with you that I am very proud of being part of the San Mateo Union High School District, not only as a trustee, being one of your feeder schools, but also a parent in the district. I have a freshman at Cappuccino. And just recently, I just became a graduate of the Masters in Governance program offered by the California School Board Association. And equity is one of the topics. And I got to tell you, I don't know if your ears were ringing during my attendance at these workshops, but I spoke so highly of the level of work and the intensity of the work that our district is doing in regards to racial equity. Bragged about our district, all the work that we're doing, the policy. And the one thing I love about the policy, and thank you for using Piedmont's as a model. When I first read the policy, I was so taken back by the glossary of terms in the back. I think for a lot of terminology for folks that are not familiar with terminology in regards to equity, I think having a glossary of terms is awesome. So anyway, I know this is the first reading, but I wanted just to speak on my very brief involvement with the Equity Advisory Committee, and I look forward to working with future meetings. And just wanted to also, last but not least, just happy holidays to everyone. Take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and please take care of one another. You all have a good night. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we'll move on. I guess if we had any comments or observations, if you want to present them tonight, and I would imagine that up to the mailing of the agenda or actually probably up through the meeting of the 20th, if we have comments or suggestions, that we get those in so that we can get a clean policy through. So, okay. Well, I thank everybody for their.
So can I just ask?
Yeah.
Mr. Griffin, do you want this? We do various things with board policies. If you don't have any comments or we don't get any feedback, do you want this on consent? Do you want it on regular agenda? How do you want us to deal with it?
Trustee Land, which
I was just going to say, it's usually what we do with board policy like this is the first read, and then the second read is on the consent agenda. And if there's problems, like you said, or if there's issues, we bring it up, we pull it from consent and discuss that at that time.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to N3 flag display procedures.
This was an item that the board asked us to bring back for your consideration. We have, I think we've, on the presentation tonight, we've put it under a sort of separate discussion part, but the idea would be to incorporate this within existing board policies that relate to flags. Dr. Kemke.
I would just say we modeled this after another district that put some policy in place, and it's been reviewed by our legal counsel. We did ask some of our students in our advancing ethnic studies class to take a look at it and make some comments. I think they plan to share those comments with me next week. They weren't able to get back to me in time for this reading, but and it was also reviewed by a small subcommittee of the Equity Advisory Group, just out of a request to have another group of people look at it. So that's the evolution of it. Their procedures, so you'll see they're just kind of written as such, and we'll take any comments. And the suggestion is to put it into the AR. And so it would just be added to the rest of the AR around flags.
Board having, well, go ahead.
Just given what you just said and getting student voice in this, Dr. Kibbe, I think probably not having this on consent, but rather looking at it as would be my recommendation.
Trustees Lees-Dwyer. Trustees Lees-Dwyer.
I just have a question because when I'm looking at it, yes, I have a question because when I started reading it, and I started at the beginning with ceremonies and observances, and Juneteenth isn't in there. So are we going to be taking action on that so that we can, if we need to make a change here, we can do it all at the same time?
Oh yeah, I could add that to this so that.
Yeah, because I saw it and went, where did Juneteenth go?
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
that
Good
was
catch.
missing. Yeah, and I wanted to see that there, but Otherwise, I thought the policy was fine, actually.
I mean, I've got a couple of suggestions, and under guidelines, and I understand that there's going to end up being a presentation, a request results in a presentation. I'd like to see the students will submit a written request to the superintendent. I'd like to have the thing fleshed out in writing and kind of know that it's set so that it's not nebulous or moving or vague. So I think that will help. And then I got a question, and this has to do with 4A, that that the flags will be flown at all district schools, and the district office should include signatures from all schools. And I'm not quite sure to what extent the particular, like, I kind of understand all schools. It's fairly subjective in saying that. And I guess we just have to, when we see the petitions, because I could envision maybe some school, nobody passed the petition around or something happened. And how are we going to interpret that? How are we going to deal with that?
We could change it from a should to may, to be a little, if there is concerns around that. I think the idea is if it's being flown at a school, we want the students there to kind of indicate their support of it. And with technology, it's pretty easy to, we'd take electronic signatures type of thing. But that would be my thoughts. We could change it to may if we wanted to be softer language. But that was the thought that I think most people had around that item in particular.
Okay, well, I mean, one signature from a school constitutes that support. I mean, that's one signature. And so that was kind of in thinking about extremes, that was all. So I'm just trying to see if there's ways we can kind of, not paint ourselves in a corner or have a situation that just doesn't pass muster for some.
We'll get some thought to that. I think that's a good point, Mr. Griffin.
And maybe the students have some thoughts about that too, because they've reviewed it, and I still yet to have their input. So
okay, that's good. Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
I'm glad that you have the students' input. You took one question off my list. I wanted to see if you could clarify, define what SMUHSD students is, whether former or current, just so there's no question about who is going to ask. Let's see, there was also the question of if the district flag, it could only have two flags on it, right? The American flag or the California flag, and then one more, right? And so what happens, I guess a procedure, what happens if there's already something there? Also a timeline, is there a due date, by this time of the month or by this, if somebody wants to fly something for a specific date, is there a deadline for that? Yeah, and I think that was it. Thank you.
So there is the time frame for raising the flag is 3C, and you would want to see more description there, or?
I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ms. Andre Zuniga, but I think you're thinking, when would we get the request prior to the flying of the flag?
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think Mr. Hanley has his hand up.
Yeah, Trustee Hanley.
Yeah, I think going back to the 4A, I definitely think it should be should instead of may. I think if you can't get student support at a school, then skip that school. It's not that hard to circulate a petition. and you know, if they're not involved, then they're not involved. You know, I think that's the way it ought to be. It ought to be set up. You know, this isn't my favorite. This isn't my favorite policy. I think the district's going to regret this. But that's the way things are. District regrets a number of things.
So we'll take a stab at it. I mean, I think your comments are good comments, Peter, because I just kind of, I don't want to see a bunch of loose end, you know, and there's probably some loose ends still flapping around in here. And I'm sure there are issues we haven't thought about.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to, the other comment, I definitely feel it should be current students, not past students. So maybe clarifying that is a good idea, just so we're specific.
Okay, well, I think we've provided some input there, and maybe you can bring this back once you give it a once over. So
I like with the flag policy that you said, you know, let's not have anything flapping around. I just thought the irony of that in the statement was interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. And once again, we have until January 20th. So if you have other feedback, certainly give it to us, and we'll be anxious to hear from students as well. Okay.
There, move on to N4 revised proposal for restorative.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, that's what we did. Okay, well, I think we're flapping to the first interim here. Mr. Hawkins, your item, I think.
You are correct, Dr. Skelly. All righty. So it's the first interim. Next slide. I know this is the night you've all been waiting for since June. It's the first interim. You had to get through all those other meetings so we could get back here to talk about the budget. So, it's finally here. It's budget season again. So next slide. One of the things you're going to hear a lot about is one-time funding. And as a wise man once said, that increase your budget, you will. So we will, next slide, please. For the first interim, I'm going to go over a couple of key themes and takeaways. We'll go over quickly the budget calendar and the significant changes since the budget adoption. We'll quickly hit on some highlights of our budget assumptions, get into the detail of the first interim and the multi-year projections, talk briefly about our certification, and talk about the one-time COVID relief funding and the impact, both positively and the challenges that will bring in the future. Talk about future considerations, and then we'll talk about a few celebrations and appreciations. Next slide. All right. So if you don't, remember anything else from what I'm saying, or if I'm too boring, please, take this away from these items away from the presentation. So it's important to know the long-term impact of one-time COVID-19 funding. We're seeing some of the largest one-time funding introduced in 20, 30 years into schools, larger than even the amounts during the Great Recession that were put into schools. These are doing great things on our campus, but as we need to phase these out as that money goes away, that's going to lead to a lot of work for the district. We were lucky to receive some one-time funding, about $2.5 million related to redevelopment agencies and the changing in the distribution of that based on a court case a couple of years ago. So that $2.5 million distorts the first interim report by some one-time unrestricted income that will not continue on. We continue to see operational and educational impacts of COVID-19. It hasn't gone away, and it's not looking like it's going away anytime in the near future. Our operational revenue, that really is primarily facility use and transportation revenue, is returning slowly. We, like all districts in the state, are continuing to have difficulty hiring hard to fill positions across the district. This includes bus drivers, student nutrition employees, hard to fill certificated employees, and others. We continue to feel the negative pressure of state mandated pension rates. This is especially important as we look towards our multi-year projection and as the state's money that they've given us over the last couple of years to mute the impact of those is going away. Those will be significant challenges for the district going forward. But I'll end on that the district, based on the board's good work, is in a very strong financial position to face all of these challenges. So next slide, please. In terms of budget calendar, we're at the first interim. We adopt our budget in June, come back twice during the year. The first interim really focuses on the current year as we have the final enrollment, the final staffing, and placements. We have the adopted state budget and a lot of updates. As we get into second interim in March, we really start our focus towards looking to the future and looking to the next fiscal year. In June, we have the estimated actuals, and we bring the unaudited actuals to the board by September 15th. Next slide. So the key changes, significant changes since budget adoption, are property taxes, which obviously are the most important and most significant revenue item for the district, are about at the same level as they were at budget adoption. But the mix has changed, and not in the way that I would prefer. Our secured taxes, which is the large majority and which we look at on the property tax and tracker from the county, those are down about $1.4 million from budget adoption. But our unsecured, which includes business assets, including planes at SFO, as well as redevelopment property taxes, are about $1.4 million higher. So same overall, but the mix is a little bit different. We talked about the one-time RDA revenue of $2.4 million related to the Chula Vista case and the redistribution of RDA revenue. We have the impact of negotiations. We included a 2% increase in our adopted budget. The final negotiations ended up at a 2.5%. And so that extra 0.5% was included in the budget, as well as the $2,000 per FTE that was given out as part of our negotiations. Some good news, the unemployment rate decreased from the proposed 1.23% to 0.5% in the final adopted budget. So that was some good news in the budget. We've got the changes based on actual enrollment and employee placement for all of our staffing. For special education, I'm happy to say that we actually saw an increase in our AB 602 funding, which is the overall allocation formula for how districts are funded for special education. Those were offset by some increased cost around non-public schools, and very specifically to residential placements. We've seen a significant increase in our residential placements in this year. And as we look through that, a lot of that relates to the continuing impact on the mental health of our students through COVID. We also saw some new grants from the adopted state budget. We got the Educator Effectiveness Grant, which you've heard information on in the last meeting, and the A through G grant, which we will be hearing about more information about in the next couple of months, as I believe the plan is due in April of 22. Next slide, please. Just a couple of budget assumptions. This chart includes our key budget assumptions for the current year and the 2 years in the multi-year projection. I'll hit on a couple. Assessed valuation, we projected about a 4%. It came in at about 3.83%. Our out years at about 3.5%. So we'll continue to monitor that very carefully. Our enrollment, we're seeing a slight decline over the next 10 years. So we've seen that over the last couple of years. So we'll continue to monitor that very closely. Down below, it notes PERS and STIRS rate. This is a big focus area. As you can note, the current year, 16.92% for Cal STIRS, 22.91 for Cal PERS. And if you see the 2022-23 rates, those are projected and for STIRS are in law to go up to 19.1%, so about a 2.2% increase. And for Cal PERS, 26.1%, which is the projection, which is up about 3.2%. So overall, we're looking at about a 2.5% increase to our employee costs just because of these state mandated increases to our pension rates. Also, just in our multi-year projections, it's as with prior years, we have not included any impacts from negotiations. So any changes in negotiations would be added to our multi-year projections. Next slide, please. Overall, the first interim, we see a decrease, a deficit of approximately 6.7 million. That's a little misleading. It includes a significant amount of spend down of one-time COVID relief funds that were received last year and are primarily being spent this year and will be spent in future years as well, the unspent dollars from this year. When you look at the unrestricted, which is the key focus, we're running about a break-even budget this year. We have a very small projected deficit of about 200,000. Next slide. As I noted, when you look across 2021-22, we show approximately a break-even budget. We show about a 1% deficit in 2022-2023, and back to a little bit above break-even for 2023-24 if our property tax projections come in. It's important to know that we continue to meet our 12% basic aid reserve over the 3 years of these projections. Next slide. The certification, we're asking the board to approve a positive certification, which means we will be able to meet our financial obligation for the current and subsequent 2 fiscal years. Next slide. One thing I noted was the look at one-time COVID relief funding. As I noted before, we received a significant amount of money that primarily was the AB 86 in-person instruction and expanded learning opportunity grants, a little less than $10 million. We spent a few $1 million of that last year of the in-person instruction grant around getting kids back in school. And we're spending some of that this year along with the expanded learning opportunity grant, which the board approved the plan. There's also a little bit over $3 million in ESSER funding, that's federal funding around the last 2 federal COVID bills that were passed at the end of 2020 and early in 2021. So the challenge with this will be unraveling these. A lot of the programs and services that we're providing are really good for our students in our community. So we're going to have to come up with a good plan of unraveling that and over the next couple of years. Next slide. Future considerations. So what keeps me up at night? Property tax growth, continuing to monitor that. That's still the most important factor in our overall budget health is our property tax growth. And noted the phase out of one-time funding, so I won't get into that, and including the eliminations of positions funded by one-time funding. I also noted those state mandated increases to pension rates. This is one thing that I know CSBA is working on. And, as you may have heard, there's a good amount of money in the state budget. And so this is one area that if the governor and the legislature are really looking to help out school districts, especially SMUHSD, this would be a great area to support us. Enrollment, seeing if we're continuing on that slow decline over the next 10 years, staffing those hard to fill positions. There's a new classified layoff procedure implementation that's going to make that'll be implemented starting January 1. We're going to go into negotiations here pretty soon. And special education needs and costs continue to outpace the state and the federal government's commitment financially to those programs. Next slide. On the flip side, I said what keeps me awake at night. These are the things that make me sleep like a baby every night is in-person learning. This includes, kind of extracurriculars, including performances, sports, dances, et cetera, that are back this year. It's just amazing to walk on our campuses and see our students learning. Just all of our district students and staff, vaccinations, our National Merit Scholars that were at our meeting last time, the Universal Feeding Program, which is just such a wonderful thing to offer all of our students a meal every day. It's just great. If you've been out there, seen our Measure L projects, biggest ones right now at Mills and Cap, and then those other one-time COVID fundings that really are helping support the impacts of COVID-19. Next slide. I cannot say enough of how lucky I am to have such a wonderful team that works with me. Valerie, Vanessa, Rose, they just do such an amazing job. And I can't thank them enough. They do the real work. So thank you to them. All right, happy to open it up to questions.
Okay, Trustee Land.
I'll be real brief. Yancy, great job. I like the succinctness of what you did tonight, and it was really good. In the future considerations, one of the things I think about when we're doing the budget planning for this year and in the future is about the staffing with the one-time funding. What could that look like? I'd like to know some options of what we could do. So instead of just eliminating and I think Dr. Skelly, I think it's important that it's not just budgetary, but what's important and what's working versus what's not. There was one other thing I was going to say, and I can't remember. It's always after 9 o'clock, I start losing it. So anyway, great job. I'll leave it.
Trustee Hanley.
Yeah, we went kind of $5 million or so over the budget in services. Can you talk a little bit about what that entailed?
Yeah, hold on. Let me pull up. So a lot of that relates to carryover funding. So that relates to those grant funds from last year, those ELO and in-person instruction. So a little over $9 million was received last year and budgeted for, but was never really, going to be spent we just received it and budgeted for it. So when those funds were carried over into this year and the board approved the ELO plan, we moved those budgeted expenditures into the current year. So it's really not an increase in projected expenditures. It's just the accounting of moving those grant funds from one year to the next.
Okay. So we're not buying a lot of extra services that we didn't plan to buy.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Trustee Land, you had another question.
No, I just remembered. So again, in the future considerations, you mentioned about special education costs. I was, we've been wary of these costs in the past, and I'm wondering if things are a little bit more under control this time.
In terms of costs, I did note that so our controllable costs, yes, I would absolutely say that they're coming in as projected. The one thing that I did note was those residential placements. We are seeing a jump in those residential placements, and they're incredibly expensive. We're talking up to $150,000 to $200,000, per residential placement. And we're seeing this across the state, and it's no surprise that we're seeing it here as well. So in those controllable costs, yes, we are seeing a very good cost control on that and meeting those goals. But the residential placement, just a change in a few from our earlier projections, really make an impact. So
could you do something in a weekly that could kind of give us an idea of,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I just have a quick comment. I think the top 4 items in that future considerations, I totally agree with, which is the tax growth, and it looks like the softening sort of the property or real estate tax revenues, and then the phase out and FTEs, and I think all this one-time money that we've been kind of blessed with. The key is going to be, and I don't know if it was Greg or probably Greg that said that, or Peter, that we really need to figure out what we want to keep and how we want to keep it, so that we get rid of the right stuff and we keep the right stuff. And then pensions, it's just totally beyond our control, so I don't know that, we're just going to have to suck it up, and hopefully there'll be some, the market probably ease and should have eased some of the rates, the pressure on contribution rates and stuff, but that's not going to go on forever. So we've got to come up with a better solution. So anyway, thank you. I think I was in the habit of expecting a Liz presentation. And I think the first time you made a presentation, it's not Liz's presentation, but your presentation tonight was your presentation, and it was really good. It was excellent. So I appreciate that. Lose the squirrel, though. Lose the squirrel.
You gotta love the squirrel. Come on.
I love SpongeBob and Patrick.
Okay. You liked Patrick at the end? Okay, good. More SpongeBob.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that item? Okay, now
you have to approve this.
I make a motion to approve the first interim.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Trustee Land, second by Trustee Hanley. Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land, how do you vote? Trustee Lees Dwyer?
Yes.
Trustee Hanley?
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and so we pass the first interim 5-0, or accept the first interim 5-0. Thank you. Construction 01, consideration for approval of Kaplan Mills Athletic Complex project change order number 1.
We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions on the change or the proposed change order?
No, I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we got Trustee Lamb with the motion, Trustee Lees Dwyer with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land?
Yes.
Trustee Lees Dwyer?
Yes.
Trustee Hanley?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll vote yes, and that item passes 5-0. 02, consider for approval contract amendment number 3 for Greystone West for Measure L projects.
Once again, we're happy to answer any questions. We need approval tonight.
I move
Any-
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we got Lees Dwyer, trustee Lees Dwyer with the motion, trustee Land with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga. How do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. And O2 will pass 5-0. Oh, boy. Division of Human Resources, P1, personnel actions.
Yes, we have personal actions and addendum for approval.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, trustee Lees Dwyer with the motion, trustee Land with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga. How do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
trustee Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll vote yes, and that passes 5-0. And one observation or comment, it's almost like the last year personnel actions has pretty well been a consent item that just goes through. So, I mean, we ought to put that on the possible list of things that, maybe, that go so quickly and are so pro forma, except I guess when we have head count changes and some other stuff. But
Recognitions.
yeah, I mean, those are the kind of things. Yeah. But anyway,
It's good to have something that can go quickly at the end of the meeting.
okay, we're gonna keep moving to P2, the revised job description for district facilities use coordinator.
Yes, this facility use coordinator job description's been revised. The position's been vacant for over a year and a half. That coincides with the pandemic and the effects on our facility use. Recently, however, we have substantially increased our use of facilities and rentals, and therefore we look to fill this position and seek approval for the revisions.
I move approval.
Second.
Trustees Lees Dwyer with the motion, trustee Land with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga. How do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land.
Let's get that revenue in. Yes.
Okay, trustee Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and the job description passes 5-0. P3, job description of new stipend position of district professional learning facilitator.
Yes, this is a stipend position for the spring semester. It's needed because our previous district PD coordinator is now managing our new teacher induction program and does not have the same amount of time for professional learning. Therefore, we seek approval of this position for the spring semester.
Is the pay the same?
No, this is just a stipend position of $8,000.
Right. Is the stipend the same?
Oh, yes.
Than we had before.
All of our stipends for TOSAs most of them are $8,000.
Okay.
Yes.
I move approval.
Second.
That was easy.
Trustee Lees Dwyer with the motion, trustee Land with the second, trustee Andrade Zuniga. How do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land. How do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
trustee Hanley.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and P3 passes 5-0. And we'll move on. There's nothing in instructional services or student services. And we're moving on to S1, the annual audit report.
All right. So I believe Jim Marta from James Marta and Associates is being promoted. As a former auditor, this is the real main event. But I have told Jim that besides President Griffin and myself, we may be the only people that are that excited about it. So this is Jim Marta, partner with James Marta and Associates. He is moved on to the engagement because of partner rotation rules. And so I will have him give a short presentation on the audit report for 2020 2021.
Well, thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. So I do want to just go over this shortly. I understand a lot of you are very familiar with this, so we'll just move through quickly. Go to the next page, please. So I'm really going to cover the required communication. So an audit also involves us making sure that the board and those charged with governance are aware of certain things associated with the audit. We're going to talk about the audit, the report on internal controls, and we did issue a report on state compliance and federal compliance. This is required scope. Next page. Okay, so as I said, we'll go on to the next page. I already said that. Next page. Okay, so our responsibility as auditors is to give opinion on the financial statement, and it's your management team, your accountant's job to form the numbers in the financial statements. And so we give opinion on it. And our opinion is an unmodified, that's the best opinion that we can give. Next page. So we work closely with the district. If you look at your report, it's 79 pages. If you looked at a report of General Motors, it's probably like 25 pages. So the reason why yours is so long is it has a lot of accountability in this report. And so that also goes in the report, in the work that we do. There's a lot of questionnaires, systems we look at. We look at student body, attendance systems, special funds. So every time someone gives you $1, there's a string attached and they make us do procedures and make you jump through hoops. So we do look at those items. We also are a resource year round to your staff when we do this. Next page. So we are supposed to report with you any interactions with management. So there wasn't any other consults with other outside specialists in this area. There's been no difficulties in the audit, and they gave us representations at the end. So everything was good there. Next. Okay, so, but there has been a change in the accounting. And so the change is because GASB has required that certain fiduciary activities have to be accounted for differently. So a number of years ago, remember when they reported the pension liabilities, that was a big adjustment. Well, now it's reporting up the fiduciary activities. They used to just be shown separate, and now they're shown as part of the financial statements. That is just moving where they are, and that was about a $1.3 million adjustment to just group that in with the financials. Okay, next page. Okay, so we don't just check the numbers. We have to look at the systems and test controls. We did a lot of that work, and it's a lot of work from your staff, but that all went well. Next page. So the results of the audit, the audit went according to plan. There wasn't any changes in it. We did have some findings in payroll and associated student body, but no significant deficiencies found in the audit, and we didn't have any audit adjustments. So that's really a good, successful audit. Next page. Okay, so we'll just quickly go into the financial statements and point out some high-level things. So next page. So the opinion is unmodified. We did have the change of accounting principle, and we did have those findings that we talked about. Next page. You have management discussion analysis, and so you may not all be numbers people. That's a great place. It's written by management, and if you really want to understand what happened in the numbers, it's a great place for you to get a feel for what happened. Did the financial position improve or deteriorate? What are the major projects? What are the major things that happen in there? And so it's a great resource to help understand the financial statement. So that's right after the opinion, and it's written by management. Next page. So how did you fare? So from the big picture, your assets have grown from the prior year. Assets are up 105 million. Deferred outflows and inflows, outflows are up to 12 million, up $12 million. So that's related to pensions. And so what happens is the pension liability doesn't get adjusted when you make payments. It's put into a reserve account to offset it. And it's only adjusted when the actuary makes that change. But although your assets increase, so do your liabilities, and so but your total net position your net position shows up, but it's less negative than before. It was 121 million negative, and now it's $108 million negative. Now let's remember that this is a government-wide financial, so it's not your fund. So your general fund is not a negative. It has to do with grouping up all of your long-term debt. And if you on the street, someone says, "Hey, how come your district has a negative? You know, you're an organization. It's teaching, but you have to look at the numbers." You as a board need to understand. And so I'll just spend a little time on that piece. Next page. So this is the condensed financials. And so the bottom line is showing that negative. So 2020 was 121 negative, and the 2021 it's 108. That negative means if we take all your assets and compare to the liabilities, your liabilities exceed the assets. Okay, but I'm going to improve on that story when we look at another page. So go to the next page. Keep going. We don't need to talk about those items. Those are just the changes. Okay, so your net position is made up with, you have net investment in capital assets, you have restricted funds, and then you have unrestricted. And you see that we have these negative unrestricted. But what I did is I just showed all your liabilities down below, and you have almost $1 billion. Now, these are not all the liabilities. These are just the long-term capital items. But I broke that down. And if I said, you have almost $1 billion, but then I said, but you only have to pay 250 million of that. And you're like, wait, that's a good story. I want to know that. 728 million of that is general obligation bonds that the homeowners pay. So although it shows on your books, you don't have to write a check or take any other resources from the district. Those will be paid out of future tax resources, but those are not your general fund. Those are special tax assessments. And so although they show on the financial statements, you don't have to pay it. So that's how I improved on that. So what happened is, when you issued the debt, you built the school, you got the school, you don't really own the debt, but we reflect it as far as accountability. Right. So I think that was the main thing I wanted to show there. Were there any questions on that piece? So if you have a negative 108 million and you take out 728, now you're looking good, right? So your financial position, so if you look at, well, what does that mean about our future? You still have a big pension liability. That's that big number in the middle, 191 million, right? And you still have to grapple with that. And that's the big thing Yancey pointed out in your budget. That's that big monster that you're paying. And that's why the rate is going up, because their CalPERS and STRS is making you increase the contribution. Okay, next page. So statement of activities showed the strengthening in revenues in this current year. Now we're looking in the past. Remember, Yancey was talking about this year, but your revenues were up because of special funds that you had, and also sometimes the timing of spending. Your expenses were pretty comparable, but a little bit up. But your change in net position, so compared to a $17 million reduction in net position, this year you had 11 million increase. And the district does need to have revenues because they have other demands. And so that was good that you kind of manage that in your budget for the 2021 year. Next page. Okay, so this is really just a comparison. Remember, this is government-wide, everything put together. Mm-hmm. And so you can see the bottom line's not negative, so that's good. Next page. We'll click. Okay, so this is where your revenues come, 85, almost 89% LCFF. Local is 1.6, state, and then federal. Next page. So over here, 83% of your budget, salary and benefits. So anything that impacts wages, CalPERS, and STRS is very impactful to your budget, and you actually have very little of other funds for spending in other areas, and that's why school budgeting is very difficult. So when the CalPERS goes up and CalSTRS goes up 2 to 3%, it's probably about average of 2% impact in your overall budget. So if you don't have any additional funds coming in, it's got to come from somewhere. Next page. Okay, so this is really the accounting trends, and it shows basically you're kind of flattening out on your ADA, but when I look at the adopted budget for this coming year, 21-22, it's a little bit concerned when your percent of outgo is dropping and your undesignated fund balance is a little bit negative. And that's the challenge, but you did have some surpluses in the 2021 year that might be utilized. And that's what happens in a school district. You don't just look at operations. Sometimes you have funding in one year that you spend in another year. So you want to manage that over the longer run. Next page. Okay, so this is where I show that, you know, kind of ADA increased. You see it kind of flattening out for you. Next page. Well, we can skip that. You've already talked about that in your budget that you looked at. So corresponding communications, the audit, we have to give you a report on internal control and compliance. So we have to report to you any significant deficiencies. There were none, so that's good news. Report on internal control under government auditing standards. We did have some findings, a finding on payroll where some folks weren't paid the right amount. They're working on correcting that. We have some problems with associated student body. That's very common. That's a learning environment out there, but some of the revenues were not clearly documented. So as an auditor, we treat them the same as anyone else, and we couldn't always determine how much they were supposed to be getting. And so it's not, we don't just count what got to the bank. We try to figure out what's supposed to get there, and that wasn't really clear in how they were accounting for it. So we have a finding on that. And no matters on federal compliance, and the feds are very tight on compliance, and so no matter. So really good report there. Next slide. Okay, so we did say there was a finding on payroll. It's $11,000 amount. We're less concerned with the amount and more concerned with having the process. So there were some underpayments of a couple of employees based on how some of their longer term increases in pay would have to be marked. And so they have to, you have different personnel policies to increase pays, I guess for longevity and other issues. And that wasn't tracked sufficiently, and they found that there was some increases that need to be made. Next page. Student body, we talked about them accounting for the collections of revenues. And you know, that's common at school districts, but we have to hold them to the same standard because of how they handled the fiduciary funds and such, that they get rolled into yours. They have to meet the same standards, so we report to you the same. Next page. So the district's financial condition, although that shows that negative up there, that's because you're showing debt that you're never going to have to pay. You are able to pay your expenses. You're not insolvent. You're doing fine. This was a successful audit, a clean audit. No state compliance, no federal compliance findings. And we really want to thank Yancy, Valerie, and the rest of this district staff in conjunction with preparing this audit.
Okay, is that the last slide?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, well, anybody have any questions except me? Go ahead. No, are there any questions? So I've got some, and Yancy and I didn't get a chance to huddle. So is it okay, there's two kinds of deficiencies. I mean, like if you look at the way processes happen and errors happen, you either have a inadequate policy and procedure, or you have a breakdown that somebody doesn't follow the existing policy and procedure. On that payroll thing, which one was it, Yancy?
It was an employee not understanding the control that was in place. There's a control around it's a longevity benefit in our AFSCME unit. So I believe Kirk noted that has been corrected moving forward.
So that, you know, by training and reviewing those policies, people should be able to comply, and we won't have, and retros are kind of difficult. They're a difficult process and subject to miscalculation anyway. So then the second thing is on the student body funds. It theoretically is possible to clean up that type of finding just by having discipline out there. And I think we need to reinforce it, you know, the need for discipline regarding student body funds, because I think when you find a lot of little nickel dime thefts, which sometimes are a lot more than nickel dime, they involve student body funds and lack of scrutiny and lack of just watching them. You know, like nobody's watching, so you know nobody cares who's doing what. So I'll just, you know, I'll do that. So I think we need to reinforce that with the, you know, with all the sites.
Yeah,
one of the things with student body is they vary what type of events they have, and someone has the great idea to have a certain event, and then you have people who don't regularly carry this on. And for instance, if you have a dance, that's the reason why you sell tickets, is so you can account for, I sold 100 tickets for $1 a piece, I should get $100. And so you reconcile those two. And sometimes they don't do the process, or they don't take the count of the first ticket sold in the end. And so it's more prone to have those things. But you're right, it really needs to, whoever is the site supervisor for those events need to be trained. But it's going to happen every year. You have to retrain them because it could be new people.
If, you know, I'm like, not on my watch if I could help it. But anyway, Greg, go ahead.
He said exactly what I wanted him to say, which is training, because the biggest problem with it, and I've done student body accounts, is what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, how do you do it? Because that is where the oversight becomes the issue. So it's not just discipline, it's about training your people right every year.
Yes, yeah, you know, it should be part of the beginning and talk about that. Over my career, I have seen money lost, stolen, but a lot of it is that there wasn't training and there wasn't some type of separation of duties, and everyone know that, you know, the site principals put in charge, they pass it on to someone, they have to know that they own it, but you have to give them resources. You have to give them the training and, get that done early on in the process.
Okay, well, thank you for this presentation. Okay, Trustee Lees Dwyer.
I just had a comment also on the handling of student funds, and just funds like that come in. I've noticed that some of the sporting events that, the cash box is just sitting there, and there's piles of money sitting there, and you kind of, there's no like lock box they drop it into. It's just piles, and I've seen that multiple times. So that's an area where I think we're kind of weak. And just with accounting, the accounting for this money that comes into the schools, probably on a daily basis, it would seem like if Yancey can befriend all of them in the field there in the offices, so they feel like they're part of you versus you, looking down on them, and what they're doing. Because there's been a little friction in the past with the schools, handling of that kind of money, and then the district office. So there's probably a way you can come up with to make it a friendly, supportive process while adding a little more security to it.
Thank you. Well, I just want to note, I've been successful in the past in working and doing training. This is across the state. This is the number one finding that you will see in school districts. And I won't claim that, we will always be perfect in this area, because also when you train folks in 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, they will be gone and they need to be trained again. But I'm really proud of the audit report this year. I'm really proud of our team, Valerie and Vanessa, the business team, and everyone who supports that. I'm really proud of the work that they do. Clean audit report is really impressive. We'll work on the small things. but I'm proud that we got the big things right. Yeah, I wanted to thank Jim and their team. They're great to work with, and look forward to working with them in the future.
Yancy, what the stuff I was talking about isn't new. We've had this way before your time.
Oh no, I know.
I don't want you to feel you're not in any way responsible for any of it. It's been something that's been kind of nagging at us for a long time.
And one thing I will say, Trustee Lees Dwyer, is we did install safes, lock Dropbox safes at all of our school sites now, so they do have that capability. So we'll need to make sure that they are using it.
Well, you can give them little boxes to take to the games too.
There you go.
Trustee Andrade Zuniga, you took your hand down. Did you want to?
Yeah, I was going to just ask about procedural rules, or along with all this stuff about the uniformity, but I can touch base with the NC later. It's fine.
Perfect.
Okay, well, we need a
I'll email
motion.
you.
It's late.
Yeah, no,
approval.
I'm like, we
Second.
need a motion on this.
I move approval.
Second.
Great
Okay,
work.
so we got Trustee Lees Dwyer with the motion, Trustee Land with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land,
Yes.
Trustee Lees Dwyer,
Yes.
Trustee Hanley.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, we accept your report. I've heard about your firm for years. I've never seen you in person, so my pleasure. So that motion passes 5-0. S2, approval of developer fee report.
So this is just our annual required reporting of our developer fees with our revenue. We didn't have a lot of expenses this year as we've been rolling out Measure L, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have Trustee Land with the motion, Trustee Lees Dwyer with the second, Trustee Hanley with the question.
Are we getting close to having any like mandatory spending of these funds?
Actually, that is actually a great question. We're required, there's a 5-year requirement, and we are getting close to that. But the second part of that is it's not a requirement to spend. It's a requirement to spend or commit to future projects. And in the report, we've noted that those funds have been committed towards the Burlingame and San Mateo gym expansion and the new gym projects, which will be an expansion of space and qualify for developer fees. What that will do is it'll free up some of the Measure L money potentially to look at the PV projects that we talked about, the photovoltaic solar projects that we talked about at the last meeting, or other board priorities. So.
Okay.
But yes, that's a great question, because we were getting very close actually. So.
Yeah, it seemed like we might be.
We're committed.
Got the motion and the second, and Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote? We didn't hear you. Maybe my things. Okay, sorry. Trustee Land.
Yes.
We've got to hurry. Trustee Land's running out of gas. His little Energizer bunny is going.
Aw.
Trustee Lees Dwyer.
Yes.
Trustee Hanley.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. And so S2 passes 5-0. S3, purchase and sale agreement.
I move approval.
Second.
Holy smoke. I couldn't even finish reading it. The enthusiasm is overwhelming.
Well,
Any questions
congratulations to everyone for getting this done? So.
Okay. Any questions, discussions? Okay. We've got the motion and we've got the second. Who was that? Lees Dwyer, Trustee Lees Dwyer with the motion, Trustee Land with the second, Trustee Andrade Zuniga, how do you vote?
Yes.
Trustee Land.
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Lees Dwyer.
Yes.
Trustee Hanley.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll vote yes, and that motion passes 5-0. And I think I felt for a moment like we were on Dancing with the Stars, and Bruno was going to rise up out of his chair. Yes. So we're gonna move on here and no board operations. Any additions to requested items?
Yeah, can we end before 10 o'clock?
That's my deep hope.
9 minutes.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Happy holidays.
Good night, John Boy.
Good night, John.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Good meeting.